Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're doing well. We're continuing our Wayside School is Falling Down series. We're at chapter 26, The Mean Mrs. Jules. Everybody in Mrs. Jules' class thought she was a very nice teacher. They were wrong. There's no such thing as a nice teacher, at least that's what the children at Wayside School thought. If you think you have a nice teacher, you're wrong, thought the children at Wayside School, because they thought inside every teacher there's a mean teacher, bursting to get out. The nicer the teacher on the outside, the meaner the teacher is on the inside, according to the children at Wayside School. Mrs. Jules was changing the bulletin board. Before class, a mean, rotten voice whispered inside her brain. Give the children lots of busy work today, it said, and then make them do it all over again if their handwriting isn't perfect. Mrs. Jules tried very hard to ignore the voices. She didn't like giving busy work. Instead, she tried to teach the children 3 new things every day. She believed that if they learned 3 new things every day, they would eventually learn everything there is to know. There are some classes where the teachers give so much busy work that the children never learn anything. What do you care if the children learn anything? Asked the mean voice inside Mrs. Jules' head. It's not your job to teach them. It's your job to make sure they work hard. Keep them in at recess. Make sure that they're following directions. The bell rang and all the kids scurried to their desk. We're going to learn 3 new things today, Mrs. Jules announced. How to make pickles, 7 plus 4, and the capital of England. All the children paid close attention. The capital of England is London, said Mrs. Jules. 7 plus 4 equals 11, and pickles are made by sticking cucumbers in brine. On her desk, she had a box of cucumbers and a vat of brine for a demonstration. Okay, Joe, said Mrs. Jules. How much is 7 plus 4? Joe shrugged. Joe had a problem keeping math in his head. But I just told you, Joe, said Mrs. Jules. Weren't you listening? I don't know, said Joe. Okay, who can tell me how pickles are made? Yes, Jason? 11, Jason declared. Mrs. Jules frowned. That's a correct answer, she said, but unfortunately, I didn't ask the right question. Can anybody tell me how the pickles are made? Yes, BB. In London, said BB. I suppose they make some pickles in London, said Mrs. Jules. Okay, let's start again. Calvin, what is the capital of England? Could you write England on the board? Asked Calvin. I can do a lot better when I see the question. Mrs. Jules wrote England on the board. Oh, okay, said Calvin. Now that I saw the question, the capital of England is E. Yes, that's one capital of England, Mrs. Jules had to admit. Okay, I will say it one more time. The capital of England is London. Isn't that where they make all the pickles? Asked Jenny. No, they don't make all the pickles in London, explained Allison. Just 11 of them. Well, where do they make the rest of the pickles? Asked Stephen. Everyone just be quiet, shouted Mrs. Jules. Well, that does it. You're all staying inside for recess. Everyone stared at Mrs. Jules. She had never told everyone to be quiet. It was against the class rules for anyone to be so expressive, using their expression that way. If you did, you had to write your name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Mrs. Jules put her hand over her mouth, then took it away. Oh dear, I'm very sorry. I don't know what just came over me. She wrote her own name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Perhaps you'll learn the lesson better if you write it down, she suggested. Everybody please take out a piece of paper and a pickle. All the children started to laugh. I mean pencil, snapped Mrs. Jules. I meant to say pencil. It just came out pickle. I didn't know pickles came from pencils, said Jenny. I thought they came from cucumbers. I thought they came from London, said Todd. Mrs. Jules made an ugly face. Todd, didn't I just tell you to be quiet? She asked. She picked up her yardstick and she said, you're going to read this yardstick and read the ruler and tell me how much it is. And she held it over Todd's head. Well, answer me. Didn't I tell you to be quiet? Yes, said Todd. How dare you talk back to me, snapped Mrs. Jules. Didn't I just tell you to be quiet? Todd kept his mouth shut. Well, answer me, she demanded. Todd didn't know what to do. He just nodded his head. Keep still, ordered Mrs. Jules. Now, I don't want you to say another word. Is that clear? Todd stared at her. Is that clear? She asked again. Just turning the page real quick, just a second. Yes, Todd said very meekly. Mrs. Jules slammed the yardstick down. Todd moved out the way to make sure that it didn't get anywhere near his hands or his fingers. The yardstick banged against his desk and broke in half. Mrs. Jules stared at the 18 inches she had held in her hand of the yardstick. She said, "Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, Todd. I don't know what's the matter with me. I must have gotten on the wrong side of the bed this morning, me asking you to try and read this ruler." She put a check next to her name under the word discipline. "Okay, let me try to make this very simple," she said. "If I have 7 cucumbers, and then I get 4 more cucumbers, and then I drop all the cucumbers in brine and take them to the capital of England, what do I have, how many, and where am I?" "Huh?" said DJ. "What?" asked John. "Could you write that question on the board, please?" asked Rodney. "Everyone be quiet again!" Mrs. Jules yelled a third time in a mocking voice. "Could you please write the question on the board, please? You children think you're so cute. Well, we'll just see how cute you really are." She picked up the vat of the brine on her desk. "How would you like it if I poured this pickle juice all on your heads? You won't be so cute then, huh? You looking like pickles?" She walked up and down the aisle, carrying the pickle juice and looking at the children in the class. No one dared make a sound. She stopped next to Leslie. "How about you, Leslie?" she asked. "Would you like a pickled pigtail?" Leslie trembled. Her pigtail started to wiggle. "Well, I'm going to ask you 3 questions, Leslie," said Mrs. Jules, "and if you don't answer them all correctly, I'm going to dump this pickle juice on your head." Leslie gulped. "Question 1, said Mrs. Jules. "How much is 7 plus 4? Leslie quickly tried to count on her fingers, but she didn't have enough. 11, she guessed. A look of disappointment came over Mrs. Jules' face. "Okay, question 2. What's the capital of England?" "London," Leslie said nervously. "Rats," said Mrs. Jules. "Okay, question 3. She looked down at the vat of pickle juice she was holding and shook her head. She thought for a moment, then smiled. "What is the name of my cousin who lives in Vermont?" Well, Leslie had no idea, so she just had to take a wild guess. She closed her eyes and said, "Fred Jules?" "Wrong," said Mrs. Jules. She raised the pickle juice high above Leslie's head and started to tip it over. Paul jumped out of his seat. Those pigtails had once saved his life. Now it was his turn to return the favor. He pushed the pickle juice back the other way. He was just trying to push it straight up, but he pushed it too hard, and the pickle juice poured all over Mrs. Jules, drenching her. Paul froze in terror. Mrs. Jules blinked her eyes. Pickle juice dripped down her face. "Thanks, Paul. I needed that. I had a very rough day." The pickle juice had cured her. She circled her name on the blackboard and sent herself home early on the kindergarten bus. Chapter 27, Lost and Found. Joy and Mauricia were best friends. They sat down on the grass to eat their lunches. But then Mauricia remembered she needed chocolate milk. She went to go get some from Miss Mush. When she returned, she couldn't find her lunch. "What happened to my lunch?" she asked. Joy looked up at her, then just shrugged her shoulders. "I set my lunch down right here," said Mauricia. "You saw me, didn't you?" Joy shook her head. "I put it here. Then I went to Miss Mush's room to get some chocolate milk. I had a peanut butter and banana sandwich. There's no way I can eat a peanut butter and banana sandwich without chocolate milk." Joy just continued to shrug her shoulders. Joy continued to shrug her shoulders, and Mauricia didn't know what to do. "Could I have a milk?" asked Joy. It was hard for Joy to talk because her mouth was full of peanut butter and bananas. Mauricia handed Joy the carton of milk. Joy took a big drink, then swallowed. Mauricia looked all around for her lunch. She crawled in the dirt as she searched through the bushes. "Any luck?" asked Joy as she finished Mauricia's chocolate milk. "I found it," Mauricia said. Joy started coughing on her milk. "You did?" Then she started to cough again. Mauricia crawled out of the bushes holding a paper sack. She sat back down and sat next to Joy and opened it. "Is it your lunch?" asked Joy. "No," said Mauricia. "Ah, too bad," said Joy. "It's money," said Mauricia. Joy's eyes nearly popped out of her head as she looked at the paper bag. It was stuffed with dollar bills. They weren't just $1 bills. There were a few $5 bills, some $10 bills, but mostly $20 bills. We, said Mauricia. They counted the money. And then Joy said, we found $1 million. Mauricia corrected her. We didn't find $1 million. They counted the money, and it wasn't $1 million. It was $20,655 in that brown paper sack. Let's split it, said Joy. You take half, and I'll take half. Maybe I should show it to Louis, said Mauricia. Louis, exclaimed Joy, are you crazy? Let's spend it. We can buy a skateboard, or a bicycle, or a horse, or a fancy car. We can buy an airplane. I like taking the bus, said Mauricia. You could buy ice cream, said Joy. All the ice cream you ever wanted for the rest of your life. She knew Mauricia loved ice cream more than anything else in the world. Mauricia smiled as she thought about it. No, I'd better show it to Louis. He'll know what to do. You'll just get into trouble, warned Joy. Louis will think you robbed a bank, and then you'll go to jail for the rest of your life. Louis knows I'm not a bank robber, said Mauricia. But what if the real bank robbers try to find their money? Then they're going to come after you. Oh, I didn't think of that, said Mauricia. You better give it to me, said Joy. Give me the money. Louis will protect me, said Mauricia, and she walked across the playground. Louis was talking to Terrence. He said, if you ever tie Leslie's pigtails to that tetherball pole again. Hey, Louis, look, said Mauricia. She held the paper sack up to his face. No, thank you, Mauricia. I'm not hungry, said Louis. It's not my lunch, said Mauricia. Look inside. Louis took the bag from her and looked inside. Yeah, very nice. Then he gave it back to her. Now, I want you to go untie Leslie and tell her. He suddenly stopped talking, and his eyes started to blink. He looked at Terrence, then at Mauricia, then at Terrence, then back to Mauricia, and then at the paper sack. Let me see that paper sack again. Mauricia gave him the bag. Hey, what about me? Asked Terrence. Get lost, Jack Frost, said Louis, and Terrence ran away. Did you rob a bank? Asked Louis. No, I found it in the bushes, said Mauricia. I believe you, said Louis. We'll have to put it in the lost and found. I know, said Mauricia. Whoever lost it is probably very sad. But if no one claims it in 2 weeks, you can have it, said Louis. He took the bag of money and headed to the office. Joy was waiting for Louis at the door. Hey, Louis, she said. Yeah, I lost a bag full of money. Have you seen it? Help! Leslie screamed from the tetherball court. Well, a week later, Mauricia was eating lunch alone. She was eating a piece of sweet potato pie. Joy was crawling around in the dirt looking for more bags of money. Mauricia, said Louis, I'd like you to meet somebody. This is Mr. Finch. Mr. Finch was an old man with white hair and a long white beard. He shook Mauricia's hands with both of his hands. It's your money, isn't it? Asked Mauricia. Mr. Finch nodded. It was my life savings, he said. For 50 years, I made pencils. I got a penny for every pencil that I made. I hate pencils. But finally, I saved enough money to quit my job and do what I always wanted to do. What's that? Asked Mauricia. I'm going to own my own ice cream parlor, he said. Then he started to cry. But when I lost that money, I thought I would have to start making pencils all over again. Mauricia started to cry too. Here, I want you to have this, blubbered Mr. Finch. He gave Mauricia an envelope containing $500. It was the second largest amount of money Mauricia had ever had. And I'm going to give you free ice cream for the rest of your life at my ice cream parlor, he promised. Thank you, said Mauricia. No, thank you, said Mr. Finch. I'm so glad someone as kind and as honest as you found it. There are so many dishonest people in the world. It's good to know that there's still good people left. And they hugged each other. Joy crawled out of the bushes. Hey, who was that? She asked. This is Mr. Finch, said Mauricia. It's his money. Look, he gave me a reward of $500, and I'll get free ice cream for the rest of my life from his store. Well, what about me? Joy demanded. Didn't I get anything? Oh, dear me, said Mr. Finch. I didn't realize someone else was involved. Mauricia would have never found that money if it wasn't for me, said Joy. Why, what did you do? Asked Louis. I stole her lunch, said Joy proudly. Mr. Finch said, I have a reward for you, and he gave her a pencil. Have a great rest of the day. We'll talk tomorrow.